I mean, I've called him a moron because the very definition of a moron is perhaps somebody who repeats stupid behaviour and keeps on repeating it and keeps on putting himself in the way of criticism. Welcome to this week's edition of One-to-One with Simon Jordan. Now, of course, don't forget to keep liking and subscribing, and equally as importantly, to leave your questions in the comment section below. But let's get on with the show. Obviously, the rumours are beginning to circulate that the idea that Mane is going to leave might become a reality, which I think is a little bit disappointing because I think he's such a key component of this very feral and ferocious Liverpool team. He is the sort of the spearhead of it. But Liverpool have already bought players that can slot in there, you know, whether Diaz can step into that position or whether Jota really grasps the nettle and takes it and makes it his own position. Liverpool, as you saw from Klopp post the Champions League disappointment, aren't going to sit down. They're already booking their hotels for Istanbul next year in terms of the Champions League. So there's no parallel universe where I think just because Man City have signed Haaland that all of a sudden that's a diminishing of Liverpool. Yes, of course it's a disadvantage. Mane is probably the most potent. I know he didn't score as many goals as Salah, and Salah got the joint golden boot, but he's the threat, he's the juice, he's the one that puts the fear of God into most defenders for a variety of reasons. So I think it's a loss if he does actually go, but I think it's a loss that Liverpool will overcome in the same way that Liverpool overcame Kevin Keegan going and Kenny Dalglish coming in, and Liverpool have overcome many things in the past. This Liverpool side is too irresistible, too irrepressible to not keep building forward. And of course, they've got the added indignation in their minds of not winning the Premier League on the last game of the season and not winning the Champions League. So they'll have those rights to wrong. So whilst I think it does take a component away, I think it provides another opportunity for a regeneration. You know, these players are getting a bit older now, so there was going to come a point when Mane, Firmino and whoever else are going to be things of the past. So now it's Klopp's opportunity to regenerate, and we'll see how that looks. But they've got the bodies in the building. It's about whether they're going to put some more bodies alongside it to make it even more of a compelling opposition to this beginning to look like a bit of a dynasty of Man City winning the Premier League. Is VAR getting worse? No, it's not getting worse because VAR is a technology that needs human intervention and human interpretation. You had Premier League referees refereeing a championship game with VAR being implemented for the first time. So there was always going to be an adjustment for the players. Look, the penalty shouts were on-field decisions, and on-field decisions will only be overturned by VAR if it's clear and obvious. And the penalties, to me, certainly one of them was very close in terms of you wouldn't have been surprised, VAR wouldn't have overturned one of them if the referee had given it. But VAR's purpose, and you've got to look at the brief, is clear and obvious, not let's get involved with critique and criticising and changing referees' opinions. Of course, the bias that VAR leads you to when a penalty decision comes and asks you to go over to the monitor is already almost like a predetermined outcome. And I suppose that's what it's supposed to do. If the VAR is saying look at it, it means look at it because there's a reason to look at it. Look, Huddersfield did not lose that playoff final and hundreds of millions of pounds simply because of penalty decisions. They lost it because, disappointingly, they were quite poor in the game. Nottingham Forest, it wasn't a great playoff final. I've owned teams that have played in them. Very rarely are they great games because of the magnitude of the spectacle and the pressure and the expectation. And it was a poor game, and what you took from that game, what I took from it, was either one of these sides getting to the Premier League are going to have to do some major surgery in terms of implementing better players in those teams to be able to compete in the Premier League. But I think it's unfair just to lay the blame at the door of VAR. Yes, they were contentious. Yes, they were controversial. But to inflate it up to, did we lose this game because of VAR? Is it getting worse? No, it's not getting worse. There are ways it can improve. There are ways that referees on the pitch, because the ultimate authority should be the referee on the pitch, and the VAR should be an aide memoire, a tool that helps him make less wrong decisions. So tragically, for Huddersfield, you know, it looks as if the VAR didn't help their cause, but I think it was also very arguable that even if the VAR hadn't have been there, that these penalties, well, they wouldn't have been given because the referee on the pitch didn't give them. So they would, VAR is almost an irrelevance in this discussion. Do I think Son is good enough for a team like Real Madrid? Well, why does it have to be a question? Why does Son going to Real Madrid have to be a question from an English fan looking at the aspiration of players? He's in a Tottenham side that's in build mode, that's getting better, that's got one of the elite managers. So yes, I think Son could play for Real Madrid. Not necessarily the Real Madrid that we see at this moment in time, which isn't the most fluid and engaging on the eye. And with all due respect, God knows how they won this Champions League, but somehow they have, because they've beaten PSG, they've beaten Man City, they've beaten Chelsea, and they've beaten Liverpool. So you have to say, however they've done it, it's to be admired. It isn't beautiful football, it isn't inspiring football, it isn't the Real Madrid of old, but it's winning football, and there's a lot to be said for that. But I look at Son and ask, would he get in Liverpool's side? Or would he get in Man City's side rather than the default setting? Would he get in Real Madrid's side? Because Real Madrid, I don't think Real Madrid coming into the Premier League would win our Premier League. I do think, with no English arrogance, that if we put Liverpool and Manchester City into La Liga, they would win that league. But when you get these one-off finals, and with due respect to Real Madrid, every time you play in the Champions League, there's 3 or 4 seemingly one-off finals because you're playing against these big sides and they manage to find the nous and the wherewithal to overcome these games. But I don't look at Real Madrid as the gold standard for where players should land up just because of their achievements in the Champions League, which are to be admired, and I know it sounds slightly ridiculous to almost be pushing back against that, but I'm more interested in how Son catapults Tottenham into winning something in England to start the conversation about where Tottenham can challenge the Liverpools, the Man Cities, the Chelseas, and whoever else are going to come to the fore. So whilst I think Son is a very good player, I think he's a very good player playing around players like Harry Kane. It may just suit him. Some people find their spaces in their places. So if that's an answer about whether Son can play for Madrid or not, that's the answer. I mean, I'm an admirer of Jack Grealish as a footballer and deeply disinterested and ambivalent towards him as a personality and person. They're young players, they're given inordinate amounts of money. Superimpose your life to being 25, 26 years of age and even younger, being given tens of millions of pounds, being adored by people and being able to be run around and have your backside wiped by everybody and wonder how you might be affected in your personal life because you're not mature enough to know the difference. Now, where he goes off the pitch is for him to develop and mature. How that hurts him. It's ironic that Southgate was talking in the papers, Gareth Southgate, about Jack Grealish, the player, and how last year he was being pilloried for not picking him, and this year he may be pilloried for picking him. I mean, you look at his season at Man City, it's very difficult to slot in a side when you've come from Aston Villa, with no disrespect to Aston Villa intended, because I happen to be a great admirer of Aston Villa, but the quality of player, expectation and outcome at Man City is far greater than it is at Villa. So he was always going to be a little bit of a bit part player until he finds his feet, metaphorically and literally, and finds his space and starts to dominate the dressing room in terms of their expectation of a talented player. Now, if I'm right, 3 goals and 3 assists, if I'm right, is not impressive stats, and it certainly isn't impressive stats enough to be volunteering opinions on players like Almiron from Newcastle. But I think we have to balance this off. I mean, I've called him a moron because the very definition of a moron is perhaps somebody who repeats stupid behaviour and keeps on repeating it and keeps on putting himself in the way of criticism. Well, I've been to the Monaco Grand Prix, and to be honest with you, it is a spectacle. It is a procession. It is full of all those people, social butterflies, not me by the way, that wanted to be around Grand Prix. I owned a car magazine, so for me it was an interesting fact to be around it, to see the pits, see the paddocks, see actually the construct of a F1 race. If you go to any of these races, there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of people that are there because they want to be seen rather than actually seeing the race. I've been to Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, I've been to various races, I've been to obviously the British Grand Prix, and there's always an element of that. There's something unique about Monaco, there's something unique about F1, and it needs stardust. Everything needs to be elevated, everything needs to have a bit of razzmatazz. Now the Americans are talking about taking that Grand Prix away because they've got different aspirations for it. You saw the uniqueness of it yesterday, all the challenges that go with it and all the controversy, and that's part and parcel of what sells. It's a unique race. I don't happen to think it's broke, so I don't think it needs to be fixed. whilst I understand it doesn't have some of the foibles and peculiarities of some of the other races like Bahrain and places like that, but it's still a unique part of the F1 calendar, and I think it would be taken away in haste and repented at leisure if people were to stop this race being part of the F1 calendar. Neymar isn't going to Newcastle, so it's a silly conversation. Newcastle aren't in that position. You know, Neymar is a global superstar, and he has, you know, to my consternation at times, because I think sometimes he is the embodiment of the modern day footballer with all the talent and a lack of regard for the opportunity they're given. He isn't going to land in Newcastle, so we might as well keep our powder dry. Now, of course, I hope that at some point Newcastle fans don't take this as a castigation of their football club, and when he's 57 years of age he comes and signs for them and I get proven wrong. But the bottom line is that Newcastle need to build. You know, I'm a great fan of Newcastle fans, some of them, not all of them. I'm a great admirer of the club, going back to my friendship with Sir John Hall and Dougie Hall and the late great Freddie Shepherd. And Newcastle have done remarkably well, and I have proven to be wrong in my evaluation. I always thought they'd stay up, but I didn't think that they would build as quickly to get themselves out of problems. It might show you how poor the bottom of the Premier League is, or it might show you how fantastically well they've done. Their buying policy was brilliant. As people know, I'm no great admirer of the ownership model. I'm not a great admirer of Amanda Staveley's. It's got nothing to do because Amanda Staveley was involved in buying or not buying Crystal Palace, because she wasn't even on the scene then. It's simply because I look at the whole regime purchase, the whole raison d'etre behind it, and I have trouble with it. I don't have trouble with Newcastle United Football Club or Newcastle United fans. I have trouble with the way that football is going, and Newcastle unfortunately are caught up in that. But to go to the original question, I think Newcastle will build properly, will build with decent players that come in at the right times, and I very, very much doubt it'll be Neymar, and neither should you want it to be, because that will make you a Galacticos, a carnival of horrors. And really what you want to be is a football club that builds discipline. You didn't see Liverpool just going out and buying global superstars. They go and buy really good players. From Southampton like Mane, they take the Salah that Chelsea hadn't wanted once upon a time. They take other players that aren't on people's lips as being, you know, iconic footballers, and they make them into iconic footballers. And that's what Newcastle should want to do. And Man City was similar. So that's the model you should be following, not the early 2000s Galacticos with people like Beckham rocking up to Real Madrid to give it all showbiz. Newcastle want to build a side that can win something. And I'm not sure that digging out people like Neymar and paying them £100 million a year is the blueprint. That's it for this week's edition of One-to-One and for the next 2 weeks, because I'm going home to Spain. But let me know your views on Sadio Mane, VAR and Jack Grealish. Of course, keep liking and subscribing, because we're almost at 1 million subscribers and we're looking forward to doing that. And I get a bonus, do I? Don't I? No, I don't. But also, of course, keep leaving your questions in the comment section. And when I get back, I'll answer them with gusto.